And if you want me to take this, I'm happy to. I did study up a little bit, but if you want to go first, you're welcome to.
Yeah, give me one sec. What the fuck do I even... Okay, because I have notes and they're useless. It's incredible. Welcome to This Should Be a Game, a podcast about adaptive media and filtering 90% of your life experiences through tabletop role-playing games. I'm Satah. You can find me on Bluesky at pesataships.gaygothvibes.online. You can find my work at gaygothvibes.online. I use they, them pronouns. I'm hanging out. We're turning the movie Looper into a game. I think I normally say that after the introductions, but I said it this... Ooh, it's time travel. Ooh, I'm switching it up. It's different this time because of a time loop. Don't worry about it. I am, yet again, standing in a field with a gun, looking at my watch, hanging out, and oh, that's weird. My co-host Jess is like a little bit late this time. I was expecting her to appear directly in front of me so that I could, I guess, kill her. I don't know why I keep putting you in the position where I'm going to murder you in an intro. I'm sorry. Where can people find you so that I guess they can catch me if I do that?
They can find me neither bound nor gagged correctly, showing up on Bluesky at jessfrom.online. They can find me also on Itch, all my games on Itch at jumpgategames.itch.io. And yeah, I'm Jess. I use she, her pronouns.
And, of course, we have our guest, who I am currently in a really cool flashback where we're in a convertible together going to a party. And we're going to go to this party, and who knows what's going to happen. I think I've lost the plot here. That's okay. Where can people find you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sebastian. I use they, them pronouns. Preferably don't find me, but if you have to, then I'm at sebastianyue.ca. Thank you.
All right. Yes, that's great. So... we are, as I said, we watched Looper, and we are going to talk about the gamifying it. What was your sort of like general impression of this movie, or what were your big takeaways, basically?
Okay, first of all, I really did like it. I went into it thinking, okay, this is going to be some time travel stuff. I'm going to really need to pay attention because, time loops and, there are a lot of films out there that do a lot of work to explain how the whole process works on like a kind of, in like a, with all of the technobabble and all of the presenting it in such a way that it seems believable, but also that like an audience that doesn't know anything about like quantum physics can understand. Mm-hmm. But I appreciate how direct it was, and it told us like exactly what we needed to know and like nothing further for the premise to make sense.
Yes, very explicitly. It's like, we're not going to do that. I really
liked that. It's like we're not doing that. I liked that. I thought it was a really cool, really compelling premise. It was great. I would have liked for there to be more women and more women who did things outside of the men in the movie. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It had action. It had some really horrifying moments, actually. Yeah. I loved the moment in the beginning where Seth's body parts start to disappear as I realized that he's he's being tortured and there's bits of his body that are just being cut off. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean that would make an impact on his older future / present self. Like that's crazy to me. Like that was so cool. I was like, oh my god, that's horrifying. Yeah. And, watching him kind of lose his, legs and crawl around, I was like, oh my god, that's, yeah.
Yeah, there are so many things. I think especially when they're playing with, the time travel stuff, sort of what I would say the title of the movie leads you to believe the movie will largely be about. It's really, really strong. And then it also throws a lot of other stuff in there that can be fun and can be a lot of different things. You could have a lot of different reactions to different parts of this movie.
Yeah, I liked that they actually showed Joe's two selves kind of sitting down in a diner, trying to have a proper conversation like people. I enjoyed that bit. That was a good moment because it got into the whole question of, well, you've already lived your life, if you can go back in time and stop this from happening, why, can you not just take the L? Is this not part of being a human? That was kind of my thought. I was like, okay, this, it's sad, yes, but also, bro, please, everyone else has to deal with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so last episode we I think all three of us were just sort of like hyped up on the many different directions that you could go with this. I should largely speak for myself. I definitely was. I was running around and sort of hopping topics a lot. And so I think last episode we came up with a lot of different ideas that sort of start to make a framework that don't have a lot of stuff that are missing some stuff like stitching them together right now. So I think what I'd like to do is just very briefly go over some of the concepts that we talked about last episode, and then we can either, depending on like what catches your eye specifically, Sebastian, we can like dive into one of those and make them more interesting, or we can just totally left turn, go somewhere else and do whatever we want, turning the stuff. We can start and we can loop however we want.
Yeah, thank you, sounds great.
The main things that I remember are that we naturally sort of like, we were talking about a GM-less thing, and then we sort of moved into maybe like an asymmetric, one person is acting as like a air control for time travel, and maybe like giving prompts to other people who are playing time travel employees who are mildly psychic. And that's the thing that kind of like lets them do the weird time travel psi magic. And there was talk about maybe eventually when you like understand someone else's character, you can play an older version of themselves. We were talking about the idea that you have screenshots or images, like literally like a screen cap of a movie or a magazine ad or something that you're giving to people and being like, this is going to happen in a timeline. Get to it, you know, move your characters around to be this visual or whatever. But there was a lot of stuff in there. What am I missing, Jess?
Yeah, just sort of stitching together a little bit of the stuff you talked about, because we did go a lot of directions. One of the places we like did last and then working backwards was the idea of like, you've got these still frames that are out of context images that your characters might not even understand how they get there, and almost like a Charlie Day with the red string aspect where you're laying all these images out and then choosing, let's jump into an image, play out that scene to find out what happens around that image, and then use that to like start drawing strings and connecting it to other images. You're actually like laying out the length of your game by saying, we're going to explore 10 images that are 10 scenes, and we're going to play them out, find out what happens, and then arrange them into a timeline by connecting them. That was one idea that we talked about. We talked about the Kid Mewtwo aspect, small psychic child who is very dangerous. And we really expanded beyond the child idea, but into what if there is someone who's very powerful, but very vulnerable for any number of reasons. It could be slapstick and they're incompetent or whatever, and you've got to take care of them. So we talked about the idea of our time travel agents or whatever having to take care of some MacGuffin-y character, and we talked about the idea that maybe they have very personal bonds to that character in a way the movie just sort of throws at you last minute at random. There was some pretty separate ideas of factions, defining like a variety of factions. And then, yeah, the other central idea you covered of just like, what if you start as your young self and then someone goes, oh, I think I can do your old self, and jumped in.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And there is so much flexibility in there for what this can be, obviously. So, Sebastian, I'd love to hear if you either have like a reaction to any of those concepts that we just threw at you very rapid fire, or if while watching the movie you had any just even totally disconnected from those concepts, if you had those moments of like, ooh, here's where I'd start with the game, like here's the thing that like I would want to chase in a game that sort of embodies some of these concepts.
Yeah, I can do both. Honestly, one of the concepts that you just outlined that stood out to me was I really like the idea of like screenshots and visual aids and like presenting a scene with no context, just because that would be, I can see myself having a lot of fun with that. It also takes out a lot of like the burden of how do we get from this scene to this scene and how do we move the game along. Yeah. It's just like, I mean, because it does recreate the feeling of you have no information. This is the only thing that you know about, and you know that you need to get to that point. And I think that I would have a lot of fun being like, wait, where do I start? Where am I? Like I need to orient myself and drive strive towards this goal. That would be a lot of fun for me, both like as a player or as a GM, or if this is GM-less, like what have you. I was thinking about whether or not it would have a GM, and if so, like what the GM's role would be. I was wondering if the GM could take the role of like the boss who's like, well, I'm the person who dictates when your contract is done, and like and I'm wondering if it would be possible to kind of find ways to, you know, like team up with your older self and be like, hey, let's go get the boss actually. Yeah, because because that wasn't explored so much. The boss kind of died as like an incidental, and I was like, okay, but like how are you guys okay with this? I understand that like this kind of all-powerful boss situation, but like in a game you can take them down, like
I love
so
that.
I was wondering how to facilitate that. I was also wondering like how many players should be involved and what the kind of various roles could be, because I think if it was going to be like a multiplayer, like, you know, we could have like space for that one character who is like, no, I'm just going to prove myself, I need like one more chance to get this right. Like that could, you know, like the person who has something to prove and isn't one of the main two people. There could be room for like other, I guess, character archetypes, but also I was also thinking like, I don't know, should this be a story game, should this be a dice game in terms of mechanics? And, you know, like one of my things has been, I have always wanted to do a time travel game that uses a D12 for thematic vibes reasons, but I don't think this game is that game.
12 hours, oh my god.
Yeah, 12, you know, like, because okay, but also base 12 though, it's just better than base 10. I hate base 10, and I hate that our lives revolve around base 10. I think it is incorrect, and but that's aside, that's like a personal thing and not like a time thing. Like, it's just, yeah. But yeah, I think that would be really cool if we were to insert any kind of time mechanic. I think it would be really fun to use a D12 in there somewhere, either as a tracker or either to like as the to determine outcomes or what have you. I would love a D12 somewhere, but again, I don't know if this is like the right game for it. I just want time travel in D12 for vibes reasons. I was also thinking, I don't know, like if it would make such a good story game though, like if it was a 2-player game, like that could be so good. Like, you know, we could go in like Descended from the Queen direction, like that's kind of like one of the more obvious things. Or I was also thinking if we really want to like lean into the kind of horror aspect that we got with the whole body part situation, we could kind of do a kind of, you know, Bluebeard's Bride style, like different psyches, and you both play different aspects of the characters because you know, the older self, the younger self, and they both have kind of different motivations and access to different information. Like that could, like, you could lean into it and make a horror game out of this.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Okay, I love all of that. I love all of that so much.
Yeah. But like, those are just my initial thoughts. And I think that there are some ways that we could kind of integrate the ideas that you discussed with some of the ideas that I have, and maybe cobble together some sort of vaguely playable thing.
The taking down the boss thing sort of like vaguely reminds me of just some aspects of Triangle Agency where the GM is also playing a character who is the GM, like the general manager. You know, you have a character in the game who you are like playing and inhabiting, and stuff can happen to that character. Like your GM character can be affected by the game, and so embodying some of that sounds so fun to me. If you literally can just like, if it becomes like PvP or PVGM at a certain point, that sounds kind of cool.
And yeah, and also just because like I like at the end of the movie, I was like, okay, this resolution when he decides to shoot himself and just stop all of this from happening, I was like, okay, that stops that immediate situation. But at no point, but like, because they didn't know that their boss had died, I'd be like, okay, but does that not also solve this problem of like the whole loopers need to kill themselves to get out of it because of the whole contract situation when the boss is dead and the guy who's actually sending yourselves after you is gone? Like, is that not a solution to that problem also? Like, yeah. And then I thought, okay, maybe this was the whole thing that the movie was trying to avoid happening, was they don't want the audience to think too much about that kind of thing.
I think that there's the don't think about it too hard is something I love about the movie, and also it's one of the most like fridge logic movies like even the stuff that I like with like, you know, the body horror stuff of the like we see the older self like losing limbs and stuff, that also like when you think about it, you're like, okay, so does that mean that they were going to cut off his arm and then keep him alive here for the next 30 years until he grew into this version of himself? Or like what because he had to survive to get old enough to be this person
to kill himself,
and
right?
it like
His life isn't changed by this question mark.
Yeah, so it definitely like
Yeah, and I'm
it
like,
falls apart, but in a way that is mostly a delightful experience in the moment, so I'll take it, you know.
Yeah, and so in the moment, I actually was not thinking about these things whatsoever, and it was only after that I was like, wait, I'm going on this podcast, I need to have, like, intelligent thoughts here that I thought about it. And so honestly, like, to the movie's credit, like, it did not concern me with any of that stuff while I was watching it, and I was just along for the ride. I was enjoying it. Like, I thought it was really cool. So I'm not really going to criticize the movie's, like, timeline logic situation just because, like, I'm clearly not supposed to get too invested in that. It's like, don't think too much about it, just accept the premise and watch the cool thing happening. And I'm like, I can do that, actually. That's fine. But I would like to kind of replicate that feeling and like that kind of unconcerned, like I don't want the players to get too bogged down into how does this work, how does this justify it, just because very quickly that can become like unfun trying to make it make sense. And what I did like was I liked that the film like allowed for such focus on the characters and what they were doing. I felt like that was super central, so I'd like to recreate that experience somehow in whatever game we come out with.
That's really interesting because it immediately makes me think of like what enables that, and I think that it's something that's actually that is just an important thing to think about for genre fiction generally. Like, when are you allowed to be silly? And I think that or just like hand wave stuff. And I think my first thought is that it's about internal consistency. Even if the world doesn't make sense, you sort of like abide by your own rules.
Yes.
And so that's interesting, thinking about like, how do we set rules that allow people to act really flexibly within them, but feel real enough that it doesn't feel like you're just doing whatever and nothing counts or matters.
Right. Yeah, because you kind of have to like partner that with like a sense of high stakes, because I felt all that like while watching that I was like, oh, I want to see what happens because I'm invested in the outcome. So yeah.
I'm thinking about how you talked about the focus on characters and how hand-waving the timeline stuff lets you focus on the characters. I think that's a really good point, and I wonder how we capture that, like, mechanically, and whether it's, like, player advice or the design of systems. And I'm thinking about the ways that, like, Bruce Willis's character, Old Joe, is able to hold multiple timelines in his head painfully, but he can do it, where it's like, this is how things are now, but these are the memories that I had. And what that, in my mind, like, what that provides to me is the ability to have character consistency. The things that define who Bruce Willis's character is, as problematic as they may be, get to remain no matter what happens to the timeline, because he gets to keep the memories that made him him, even as other things change. And so I don't really know how much this gives us, but I'm just thinking about the ways that you can like frame to players that like things in the timeline can shift, but who you learn you are as a character is like untouchable. Like, you will always have been shaped by these experiences, and even as the timelines shift, you stay the person that you are. You may grow and change through new experiences, but you are never expected to reshape who you have always been through the timeline, and that way we get the character drama that we already have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also was thinking about like about the whole meta layer of like how much information do you have as a player versus how much information do you have as a character. And I did think it would be like, it's kind like, I felt very strongly that it would make sense for the person who is playing the older character to have access to more information as a player, and it was kind of up to them how to reveal that to the younger character, just because that is very true to what was happening in the movie. I liked that aspect of it a lot. And I was thinking about, like, you know, the scene in the diner when he's like, no, look, this is how it's going to go. Like, you know, how do I present this in such a way that, like, this person in front of me is going to believe or even care about it? Like, currently, like, he's like a, you know, 29-year-old, like, drug addict who is, you know, trying to make his living out of being an assassin. He has other things on his mind.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something that even ties in with the idea of the visuals and working towards them, where there's something like the younger version of a character can give the older version some visuals, and those are sort of like the plans. It's like, here are some images that I am working towards in my life. If I keep going the way that I have planned right now, these things will happen. And then the older character can like shuffle a couple other ones in and like take one out and just like and then I have no idea what would happen with those, but sort of having a like, oh, your plans are adorable, kid, here's how it actually goes, or like, yeah, you're gonna get this, but it's gonna be completely different than you expected, kind of thing.
Yeah, make a deck of cards and one of them's a picture of an explosion and it's like, hey, look at this.
Is
like
this good?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like the idea of like the older self, if we've got our like sort of cork board with the red string, the older self like picking a still, like a photo, and going like, this is something that happens, how do you think this happens, and just getting the younger self's like speculation of their future, and then the older self being like, okay, let's hop into a scene with me and a couple other players and play out what actually happened. And like the younger self sharing their expectations is less about like actually determining the outcome and more about the fun of knowing the difference between the two. It's almost like they're more for the players than it is for the characters.
I think so.
Or for you to then create dramatic irony of like, okay, I know my younger self intended this to happen, but that's not who I decided to be.
Yeah.
And so you get this, you still get the play to find out what actually happens, but it's the old self who is inhabiting that character in the process, and the younger self is just providing a little bit of like the setup for what you think, what you expect.
I also think that there's like there's a space for tension there for the younger self being like, well, it straight up doesn't happen because I'm not good, because I can do this and this to prevent it, and then the old self goes, that's exactly the attitude that got me here, haha. Like, you know, I think I think that'd be really fun too.
I have a D12 in my hand. I'm just rotating it around. I'm like fidgeting with it, being
Right.
like, "Talk to me, baby. Like, what are you bringing to the table here? I don't have anything
secrets.
yet, but
Okay.
there's something about like with time travel, you're trying to like trying to make things happen at a specific time. You're trying to like, you have to roll the thing as somebody else did something, and you're using D12s. I don't have it yet, but I will have this die in my hands for the rest of this recording, and maybe it will say something to me. Who knows?
Yeah. And then maybe it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily have to be a D12. It can be a D6, because I guess that's permissible. It's just the vibes.
I brought up triangle agency, and I think that it's good and fine to commit to dice for thematic reasons.
Commit to a bit, right? Yeah. I do like the idea of like maybe something occurring when you roll the same number, and maybe for a D12, because it has so many sides, it would need to be a number range to increase the probability of that happening. But I like that idea. That means that like maybe you get pulled into the same scene together, or like maybe there is one thing that definitely happens, and now you have to contend with that. Like I think that's really cool, actually. So the D12 has in fact revealed its secrets.
Yeah. Oh, that's really fun. And I bet that we could tie it into even stuff like having 12 of, like if we have 12 images in front of us that we know, and like two people roll to go into a specific one, then another one they can, I don't know, this is too even for this.
And then I think if you roll roll the same number twice in a session, I think that something could happen whereby that scene is, like you can mess with it and be like, well, we already did that scene, but what if we did it again, and then what if this happened,
redo.
It's like, so you
mechanic is
a redo. What was that?
Of course it has to be. I love that. And I especially love that if we can somehow like nudge characters, if they almost have a like predictability score. Not literally.
Yeah, I think they need I'm thinking like they could have like a kind of like a Starcross style track whereby it's like, mark off a thing every time this happens. Ooh. And then, and then it like the total at the end kind of determines some sort of end state. I think that that would make sense for like a way to track consistency. Like, mark this off every time you do X,
That's, I like, one of the things that I have been just very idly thinking about is like, we definitely want it to be hard for people to change the future if they already know what it is, but it shouldn't be impossible, right? Like, people should be allowed to do weird time travel change stuff in this game. And the idea of linking that to a tracker of some kind makes so much sense, especially if it has, I think that we've brought up sort of Fiasco endings where it's like, again, it's kind of ranges, and it's like you get a certain amount on this tracker and you can't change anything and it's tragic, or you can't change anything but it's better than expected, like you change something and it's way worse, kind of thing. Yeah. That's great. I really like that idea.
I'm also thinking about going back to the sort of teaming up against the boss element, if that comes into the result of the tracker, is like, oh, like you get to the end of some sort of scene, and in Fiasco, like someone has to judge, okay, did this go good for you or did this go poorly for you? And that determines how the tracker moves. And then the idea that it's like, okay, do we feel like you and your future self were in sync on this? Or do we feel you were at odds on this? Did you both, like, whether it's like you both had similar goals like in the future and you actually like both work towards the same goals, or maybe it's like only happens in scenes where you're together and then you evaluate, like, did you work together or were you at odds? But just the idea that you're sort of tracking along the process how in sync you are with your older self, and then that determines, like, in Fiasco you end up like above or below 0, and farther is worse, and it also determines like some things about tenor, the idea that like if you end up positive, you get an ending where you team up against the boss, and if you end up negative, you get an ending where you go against each other, and then how that goes depends on the magnitude of the like positive or negative. Really stealing.
That's a really
Fiasco.
cool way. Yeah, that's a really cool way to like measure the strength of an alliance, and whether it's just going to be like the enemy of my enemy, or if it's just going to be like, no, we've decided that together we are powerful and we can take this guy down. I think that that's really cool.
One of the things I'm curious about is that if we can do that without it being quite that explicit. If it's like the boss, the GM's character or whoever has an enormous ability to influence your tracker. Basically, like on their turn, they can say, like, they can use their, like, because they're like, you know, they're doing a lot of different time travel stuff. And so if they see your tracker is at 10 or whatever, they dispatch an agent off screen to do something, and they're like, that should go down 3.
Yeah.
Because I just did something. And so I wonder if it's
cool.
almost like a not as much like saying explicitly you have to team up against the boss, but just providing a lot of reasons why you might want to. And one of the things I like about that is that it means there's tension with, there might be somebody whose goals align really well with the boss. And so the boss is saying your tracker's at 10 and going, oh, that's great. Don't worry. It's actually at 11 because I just helped you. And so then there's a little bit of that like friction of like, you know, some people might want the boss to stay in power because it's working for them. Yeah. Obviously, inter-party conflict is something that you have to be very deliberate about stoking the flames of, but I think it can be very cool.
I think that is really fun. It's a fun option to give people. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
This also, we talked a lot with Aaron, or we kind of kept circling around the idea of like factions. If we leaned more into that lets us like make goals a little concrete. If you're like forming factions and like breaking factions.
Yeah, I think that also like allows you to have like different layers of goals. There's a faction goal versus your goal as a character versus the goals of the other people, and it's like, you know, and maybe one of these aligns with other people's, maybe some of it doesn't. Like, I think that allows that would kind of set up like the party conflict situation that we were just talking about.
Right. And I think that we touched on like, you know, the factions that we sort of see in the movie. There aren't a lot of them. We basically have, you know, the main thing we get is like there is clearly a social status that comes with the specific gun that you have. We've got the Gatman, we've got the Loopers who have the blunderbusses. One detail I love from the movie, by the way, it does early world building so well. Everything's so grimy. There, like, Joe comes in to, like, I don't know, do whatever he does in the office, and there's just a clearly, like, printer paper sign that's like, blunderbuss is here, don't bring them to the back.
And my favorite thing is, like, the here is in inverted commas. Yes. It's so funny, like...
Yeah. Oh god, I love that.
Going to the prop department, just like make this as bad as possible.
Yeah, make it look like it sucks here, because it does.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm really curious, Sebastian, if you have any, just off the top of your head, like, is this like inter-organized? Does it interest you to have everybody sort of like, if we all have the same boss, presumably we're all working for the same organization, how do you see that sort of breaking down into different groups if we are encouraging factions? What's interesting to you there?
Yeah, I did not. It didn't occur to me, like, after watching this film and thinking about how it could be gamified, like, that the different factions were like, that's not necessarily where my mind went. But I do think there is definitely space to play around with that. I mean, I'm wondering if not necessarily factions, but if there's I wonder if there's a way to make this more global, just because we didn't get a sense of like locations other than, like, I mean, France exists and Shanghai is the site of a lot of trauma. So like I'm wondering if there are different factions like elsewhere in the world who have different goals, who operate differently, because this is, you know, because of how they integrated the real world locations. And I'm thinking, okay, like, how is this you know, this is still a world that has been shaped by all of the issues that our current world has. Is there a way to tell a larger story here about, like, I don't know, colonialism and global capitalism? And if you, like, you know, what do the loopers look like who are in Shanghai? Like, that's my question. Like, what are they, and also what are they going to do with all these white guys who keep coming here? Like,
right. That's so interesting. Specific, like, there's so much that's interesting about that. I'm thinking of, like, I don't have great examples off the top of my head, but I know that, like, when you think about how different languages relate to time very differently, like, there are languages that don't deal with future in the same way that, like, for instance, English does, and that kind of thing, and they would have to have a different relationship to time travel, presumably.
And Mandarin is one such language, like, because the verbs don't conjugate in the same way, but you need to have an adverb of time to indicate when in time this is taking place, and so time is actually really central to that language structurally.
God, what a fucking buzzer noise. Missed. It's so frustrating to look at this movie and be like, oh, cool, you could have done something cool if you had, like, had any interest in doing something cool by, like,
treated other places as real.
Yeah, that's, which, you know, classic problem, but
like, no, just the whole situation with, like, Shanghai in the movie, I'm just like, okay, this place exists just to traumatize this white guy and just to, like, kill this woman. It's, that was one of my major criticisms.
It is, like, it's so blatant that I don't remember if I said this in the last episode, but it's one of those things where, like, I almost kind of forget sometimes that movies can just be that blatant in like...
Yeah, and, like, the whole movie he keeps saying, I don't want to go to Shanghai, I want to go to France, that's why I'm learning French. And I'm just like, okay, but, like, I don't know, there's two conflicting feelings. Number one is like, okay, well, fine, Shanghai doesn't want you anyway, but also the second one is like, hey, why wouldn't you want to go to Shanghai? It's better than Paris, screw that. Like,
there's such an inherent judgment in it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking now about the idea of, like, time travel organizations in different places, and, like, Seda, you mentioned last time Sam Donowald's, I think it's Band-Aids and Bullet Holes, where you open by reading the sort of, like, tenets of the criminal organization that you're a part of, like going around the table and each reading, like, a principle of it, and the idea that, like, you're actually defining in the process of play how different time travel operations in different places operate. Like, you're coming up with, like, a mission statement or a principle or a tenet for, like, each one. Tenet's a different time travel movie, but anyway, you're like just moving around and in, like, cities or the world and being like, okay, the one here has rules like this and goals like this, and you're starting to find that out, or, like, flesh that out is something coming to me.
One visual, basically, or, like, moment that makes me think of is the idea of a scene where, you know, there are specific moments in history that are just really popular with time travelers because they're trying to change stuff in specific ways or whatever, and or having it be, like, set up an expectation. It's like, okay, we found a field in 1982 that no one goes into, and so whenever we need to have, like, interfactional time travel discussions, we go to that field in 1982, and just being able to, like, have a little meetup with a bunch of people.
It's like they're, like, neutral ground, as in, like, we need to, like, as in having this meeting, where are we going to destabilize the timeline the least? Like, it's I appreciate that kind of level of mitigation.
Going into more back to some of the red string ideas, which I know I keep going back to, I'm thinking about map making games. and how map making games often use place as a way to generate story, and the idea that the red strings aren't just time, but they're also place, and imagining that you're like sort of like you're placing these still images in the place, like you don't know where they occur, but you're starting to define where they occur through play. So you end up defining like a faction in Kansas City and then a faction in Shanghai, and then you take one of your images and put it on this map and say, this is something the Shanghai like branch did, and they did it at this point in the future. And then you go to your next image and you place it in Kansas City, and like you can put multiple in one place, but like that you're defining a map of time and space through the scenes that you're defining.
I like that idea. I wonder if that's something you could do at the beginning, just to like establish like the kind of underpinnings of the game and set the theme. Yeah, I wonder if you could do that as like part of like setup phase 1 of the game, because then like that's going to influence how you behave like the rest of it, right?
We need to develop a 3D play aid that is like a box, and you can have like, you need to be able to layer stuff on top of each other and beside each other. So it needs to be like a wireframe cube that you can be like, well, this happens in this
diorama,
place, but 5 years. Yes,
like
exactly.
Yeah, with different layers for each timeline. Like
a little sci-fi 3D, like you can wave your hands around Minority Report style.
Yeah, let me rotate the cube in my head like like a video game inspection. Like, yeah.
Okay, I'm getting really detail oriented here, but actually thinking about ways it could work if we wanted to get this literal. Like I wasn't thinking this literal when I was thinking about like place and time, but like,
okay, but it would be so cool though. I love a tactile thing to play with.
Yeah.
So like if vertical is space and horizontal is time, and so every time you add a like significant location, you add a row, and then left to right you are arranging when this is happening in that place. And so and what that really lets you do is that in time you're not even strictly defining like a moment, but you're saying, is this before or after? The only question that matters is before and after. And then in space you're not defining this is 1,000 miles apart, you're defining this is in place we care about or place we care about.
Yes.
And so row is place we care about, and column is before or after.
Yeah, time isn't a line, it's a cube. That's good.
Yeah.
The time cube, the classic time cube.
In the time cube, yes.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I want to turn back to a slightly different topic at this point, because something you've brought up a couple times that I've heard from you, Sebastian, is like, you know, being able to really find time for that like interesting character conflict and those character interactions and that kind of thing. And I would love to, I don't know, talk about what that looks like in this setup. Like, is it just like the scenes that we're setting up with these visuals or whatever? Are we doing stakeouts? Is there downtime? What are the relational things here? Is it like we're seeing people's day-to-day lives when they're not on the job? Are we going between both? Do you have anything jumping out to you there?
Yeah, I do like the way that the film handled bodily injury, because he did get injured, and that did result in a significant amount of downtime during which this character interaction with oh my gosh, what's the actress's name? It's Emily Blunt's with Emily Blunt's character. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And so I'm thinking that, I mean, if this game is going to involve a lot of violence, I do think that healing and recovery should be an important part of it. And just because that also adds an extra layer of like physical vulnerability, in addition to maybe there are certain things that the character has to do during downtime to like in order to heal them. I don't know if this is going to be a stat-based game, but in order to recover some amount of game resource that they need to be effective. And maybe it's a thing that they can also choose to sacrifice in order to do another thing. I think playing with that, I think that could be fun, actually. And then maybe there's space for the game to be like horny in a way that makes sense. Because this movie was, I wouldn't even call that horny. That was something. Just
I am so like, as we like, they really do have sex for no reason, and I was so fascinated by the only setup they do for it. I really want to know if it was scripted or if it was Emily Blunt being like, we need a thing here. We see her like touch her thigh.
Yeah, okay, like,
and then she summons him.
Right.
And like, so it really is like, girl, I think you could have taken care of that in another way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't...
It's like, yeah, I saw that, like, the shot setup, you know, like, because the lighting, it was all, like, you know, there was a lot of focus on, like, the kind of, like, the hem of her, of her gown, or, and, like, the lighting, she looked like she was gonna cry, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what's gonna happen now, and I'm not gonna like it. And, yeah, no, again, my first thought was, like, she needs a vibrator. Why does she not have one? Like, if I could go back in time and do one thing, it would be give this woman a vibrator. That would solve that problem.
You're a single woman living on a farm.
Like, I'm sorry,
surely,
but, like,
you,
please.
like...
Like, how do you do this when random people don't just show up? Because random people do, in fact, show up. Like, she establishes, she's like, hey, if you're a random person, just here, come out, because this happens every time. Like,
she's a powerful telepath. So, she's got options.
I keep hearing that country girls make do, and yet.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I think that also in that, like, there could be space for this game to be horny, but in a way that makes narrative sense. Or at least, maybe not sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be, like, narratively satisfying.
And then we get into fucking your older self, which is, like, totally unexplored by this movie.
Yes,
like,
exactly. Which is, yeah.
I love that. Okay, so both the injury and the sexuality thing bring to mind the idea that I think one of the things that points out to me is that I think it's so important for this game to be explicit that, like, you might have powers, you might be mildly psychic, you can time travel, you're not superhuman.
Yeah.
Like, you have a regular mortal human body that can be injured. One of the things that is what I like about that, and that it reminded me of, is like, we were just going on about time and space and how they are linked. This is one of the really stupid big thoughts that I love to entertain sometimes, is like, if space like, time is the only thing stopping everything from crashing into itself.
Yeah.
Everything would be at the same place if time didn't happen to separate it. And that to me points towards, like, making physicality important and being realistic about that. Like, yes, if you get injured, you do need to take time to heal. You don't just, like, you aren't just better right away, and being explicit about that. And that pushes the game immediately in a little bit more of that, like, very physical, tactile direction that I think makes such perfect space and time for sexuality and, like, that specific kind
care,
of, like, exploring that intimacy.
And because, and so, like, I was thinking about it in terms of, because, like, that is when that scene takes place, is when he's just, and the reason why he can't leave the farm is because he's injured and also is waiting around for his older self to come here. So, like, there is a reason for him to so no, that was kind of what I was thinking too. I agree with that.
I'm thinking about, okay, so a mechanic that I am obsessed with that I've never actually gotten to put into a game just because of the type of games I've made, is like scars type mechanics, but not like literally, like games where like you can never like totally die, but like when you reach that state, you take something that stays with you and becomes something you have to deal with in an ongoing way. And like those can be both physical but also like emotional and narrative. And in a game where you have a future self, the idea that you are carrying scars that then your future self also has to deal with having, like when you take a scar, it's not just on your character, it's on their character.
And the way that like, you know, they were like carving addresses into this man's skin, like at the beginning, I was like, oh, I think that's really cool. That's a good, I like that idea too.
And the idea that, like, let's say you like take a scar and you are entering an injured state, like the whatever you take is going to stay with you, like mentally or emotionally, but to get back to like being able to do things in the way that you would, you need care, because that is the case in this movie, that like anyone who takes a significant problem, the only way that they're going to get out of it is if someone chooses to care for them. Like when Joe chooses to care for Seth, who is like ran his loop or whatever it was, and then he chooses not to care. The moment he turns on Seth is screwed.
Yes.
And as much as the dead wife character sucks, it is part of an ongoing theme of like the only way you get out of a bad situation is someone else cares about you. And this movie doesn't care about the caretakers. Yeah. But we can design a game where caretaking is intimate and important. And so when you end up in these injured states, you take something that stays with you, but in order to get back in action, you have to have intimacy and seek and receive care in ways that develop interesting character moments.
Yeah.
One question that immediately brings to mind for me is, are we making room for that to be characters who aren't working, who aren't your coworkers? Like, are people also sometimes portraying just regular people who aren't part of that? Or are we pushing those relationships to be with essentially your coworkers or whatever? I think both have a lot of really interesting possibilities, because having a making room for people to have those weird conversations where they're like, I don't experience time the same way that you do because you are just a regular person and I do time travel type stuff, is cool, and those conversations could be cool. But keeping things more focused and being like, you are playing this character, form these relationships and have this intimacy and really dive deep into that is also fruitful. I don't know.
I'm leaning towards keeping it within the coworker relationship, just because that makes it so much more intense. And also there's a lot of space here to be like, ooh, but enemies and lovers though. What if? Right? Come on.
I was going. That's right.
Yeah, right. And so like that is the most exciting. Yeah, that's the more exciting idea for me. But I do see that there's space to do both. Enemies and lovers though.
I was so enchanted by the idea of like, okay, so we're on like different factions or whatever, but like I need help. What's the reason that like we actually need each other in this moment?
Yeah. And like, yeah, and like, you know, like you see that I'm injured. Why do you suddenly care about me now? You know, like, yeah.
Going back to sort of the Kid Mewtwo stuff we talked about with Aaron, what if everyone is Kid Mewtwo? What if everyone is powerful and flawed and needs someone's help sometimes? Gets like, it's just so juicy.
That also gives me I'm thinking about two characters who work for different factions, but they're on the same stakeout because they're both there to change something in this timeline, but their work doesn't interfere with each other. So they have no reason to like fight. And so they're just like doing a stakeout together, basically. They both have their different goals. And oh no, there was only one bed. Whatever.
Yeah, let's say it, and they have sex for no reason.
And they both have different guns. That's also
of course. That's also very importantly. And there is a character who has quirk of constantly meticulously stripping and cleaning their gun during intense conversations, of course.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm like powered by the apocalypse, or not powered by the apocalypse, actual apocalypse world sex moves that like different characters like have different relational effects when you have the like
sex
intimate
move, but
moment.
But it's when you take your gun apart, like.
There's so much leaning into the metaphor that can be done there. Also, oh god.
Is it guns in this game?
Oh, or do they have like other signature items or weapons or whatever?
It doesn't have to only be guns, but I would like for there to be some amount of firearm.
I think that makes sense. Like it is the visual of it is just great. And the Gatman monologue when we first learn who they are, where he's basically like, you are given a shotgun because you're a dipshit and you just have to get close and you can't miss with it. Me, I have the cool gun that you can miss with, and I'm given it because they know I won't, or whatever. And like,
then he
just
does.
like, and then he does.
It's really funny.
The social implications is so
it's like
good.
the shooting yourself in the foot when he's like spinning his gun. I was like, oh please stop. It's
sopping wet. The idea that like you have to define your signature weapon and then say, what does your weapon say about you? Like, why is your weapon the way it is, and what does that mean about your character?
Maybe that's a character creation thing, and I wonder if there's ways to change or customize your weapon as you go on. Maybe the scars happen and reflected on the weapon too. That could be cool.
Oh, that's fun.
Or you can also like surrender your weapon and take someone else's, like joining a faction like involves giving up your badge and gun and then like becoming a little different than you were.
I think I would especially love it if people define what what I think my weapon says about me, and then what other people like, you know, define both the positive and negative, like define the positive reputation, and also be like, and here when people are making fun of me, here's what they say.
Yeah. Maybe it's the kind of character creation thing where it's like, oh, what did you think of me when you first saw my weapon? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
The here's what I think of me, here's what other people think of this thing about me is such a Seda character creation classic to me.
I love it.
It's so good.
I also like that Sarah had like a kind of classic, you know, like I'm a like farmer shotgun. Like that was fun too.
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely. With the rock salt. Think about what like the loading it with rock salt means and how much character you get out of that.
Right? Yeah. I really like that moment too. It's just like, okay, so she does have good defenses. That's great.
I unfortunately couldn't stop thinking about Glee, where there's a whole plot line where people are putting rock salt in slushies and they're slushing each other, and then there's like they try to get real actual drama out of it, where Blaine like gets rock salt slushy in his eye and has to go to the hospital. So
I have never seen Glee.
That's okay. You don't have to. I was a theater kid in 2009, so it was mandatory for me at the time.
Yeah, but I know like what songs got covered and stuff because like all of the kids in my school were obsessed with it.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
I love that also suggests the slapstick version of this game where your weapons are slushies with rock salt in them and it has to have the same stakes.
That's like, I mean, I don't actually think I want to go down this road because ultimately I don't think that it served. There's a game. It's a battle royale. I want to say it's an Evil Hat.
There's Deathmatch Island.
Deathmatch Island. Yeah, my experience with Deathmatch Island, this didn't serve it, but I think it could be fun. In Deathmatch Island, you can play, the default mode is high lethality, you have guns, you're killing each other. But there's also the paint gun version that is like, you know, you're shooting each other with paint guns and stuff, and I only think it didn't serve it for me because it was my first experience with the game, so I wish that I'd played the vanilla first before doing the safety mod. But like, it's really funny to think about including that
is funny
in this game too.
Yeah, but no, I think I like this. I like the high stakes of the whole assassination situation. I think that's really that was really central to the movie. If we're gonna
and I think to get some of the like intense intimacy we're talking about, it also helps to have like so much on the line.
Yeah.
Like, okay, sorry, like your arm got bruised because I hit you too hard with the paintball. Well, how do I help you recover from this? The only way is if we fuck. Like, can you imagine that?
I love the idea of intimacy prompts that are like, it's almost tracking changing levels of intimacy, where it's like, where do you put your weapon when we're alone kind of thing, where it's like, you know, you start and it's like, well, it's in my holster, and then eventually it's like, it's on the bedside table, and then like just like exploring like how that changes.
The gun is on the pillow next to me. Yes, me and my partner and their blunderbuss.
Yeah.
The idea that like going into a sort of still frame, if we're still doing like the still frame scenes, they are also getting some like question prompts. So like, you're in this still frame, but where is your gun? It's fun to imagine like providing not exact context, but context you are forced to name. And it also gives a little structure to scene framing. Is like, here is a piece of context you must establish. You don't just have a photo and then you have to figure out what to do with it. You have a photo and a question you have to answer.
I haven't finished the episode yet, but I was listening to, speaking of Sam Dunewald, the Belonging Outside Belonging Strong and Weak Moves episode of Dice Exploder that Austin Walker was on. And one of the things Austin says really early is he's talking about like different forms of whatever can explore different things more efficiently. Like a novel is really good at interiority. You can be inside someone's head. A movie is really good at setting stuff up really fast. It's doing stuff visually. And he names that he thinks tabletop role-playing games are particularly good at exploring intention, because you can do an action and then very separately from that say what it means. He specifically uses an example of like leaning against a wall could be a threat or it could be an expression of vulnerability. And I think having that in here with some of the prompts and something about changing contexts, like even if it's as simple as you left your weapon across the room, how are you feeling about that? And you feel trustworthy, or you feel good. It feels nice to not have it on you because you're kind of sick of your job or whatever. And then something happening to ask you to reevaluate that. It's like, I now feel scared because it is not within my reach and I don't like that, or something like that. That is like, and I think that in some ways that starts to like wander away from the theme a bit, but I think it's something that could maybe be integrated throughout the whole thing in a way where we're pushing people to reevaluate what they think they know. Like, we know, I think an example that came up last episode was you see yourself in front of a judge, and in that, you know, one version of it is like, you're like, I know that I'm a lawyer and I'm saving my client. And then you're like, oh no, I'm on trial for murder. And then you could even reevaluate that again and be like, oh no, it turns out I am like a star witness kind of thing, you know? And just consistently asking people to reevaluate what they know as the timelines sort of shift, even if we don't always have a reason for it. Maybe sometimes timelines just shift because something happened and you're like, tell me what changed. Tell me how you're feeling about it.
Okay, two things really leaping out to me from that I'm excited about. One, to like keep it in theme and connect back to the time travel a bit, the idea that like, okay, you're answering this question about how you think you're feeling in this moment. Knowing your feelings is hard. Being in touch with your feelings is a difficult, lifelong process. That later, your older self gets asked the question, in reflection, how do you think you were actually feeling in that moment?
Ooh,
yeah. Or how do you remember feeling in that moment? That's, I see where you're going, yeah.
And when we're thinking about, we talked earlier about like how in sync are you with your older self and like scoring and rating and the Fiasco post-scene ratings, like the idea that like the older self can be like, no, that was how I was feeling, or no, I didn't know myself at all, and that does the same sort of like how in sync or out of sync are you. If you have 12 scenes or 12 stills that are 12 scenes, and you're rolling randomly every time to see which scene you end up at, even if they're not hours, but you roll d12, and anytime you roll one that's already been done, you're now doing a reevaluation prompt for the older self. So the first time you're doing a younger self scene, but anytime you roll the same scene more than once, the older self has to do a reevaluation prompt instead. I feel like ties some of those things together.
Yeah. I'm also wondering if there's a mechanism to track, like, say you're doing a scene with the younger self, and then, you know, you ask a question, you say, like, you know, how do you think you're feeling in this moment? Then the older self, right, you know, like, secretly records their answer, and at the end you kind of compare it and be like, oh, like, is this in line with what you were doing? And yeah, I think that could be fun in terms of like the whole, how do you determine how in sync you are with yourselves?
One of the things I love about that specific method of it is that in a way that ties back to a conversation we had last episode, is that this framing, like, neither person is necessarily correct in their evaluation of it, because like the older person could say like, oh, I was terrified, like that was terrifying, and they could be right, because it could turn out that something really scary happened. It could also be that they've just rewritten the memory because like they're scared. They were like, they're scared now, and they're like, oh, I was really safe then, but I don't feel that now, and so no, I must have been very scared. Or they could just be misremembering. They could be conflating two different things, you know. And I really like that maintains, and you have the chance to like explore and explain, well, why do you feel differently? Like, why is that hitting differently?
Like, what happened between now and then that has changed your perspective on it?
Yeah.
To pull on Sebastian's idea of like, what if you write it down as the scene is happening and then keep it in secret, which actually plays with some stuff we talked about with Aaron around like, you know, the telephone and secret prompts. What if you do that, and when you re-roll the same scene, instead of this is when the older character now answers the prompt, it's a diner scene. When you re-roll
and then they meet
the
up and
scene,
talk about it. Yeah.
That's when you get to reveal what you wrote down, and you can't reveal it until...
Yeah. And then maybe the older self can say, hey, this is what I was feeling. This is why. And then you can get into the whole, this is how this goes from this moment to that moment. Like, I like that.
It's when you have to confront that conflict.
When you actually have to confront it. Yeah.
Finding and explicitly setting up opportunities for the two selves to meet up and have those conversations in specific ways is really great. I really like that as a framing.
The other thing is that the diner is a location that the young self, it is already an established location, and so maybe this is getting too restrictive, but the idea that, like, when you re-roll the same place, if we're still playing in that structure, not only are you now reflecting on a memory in this place, and talking about it with your younger self, but you're doing it at that place. Like, part of why that memory is the one that comes to mind as a topic of discussion is because you are meeting up at this place that the younger self had this experience.
I think that would be great as an option, but not mandatory.
Yeah, it's very restrictive.
Like, one of the things that's great about that is that it almost gives you the, like, procedural, like, cop scene where people are, like, meeting up at the scene of the crime, and like, you know, you're having Will Graham going into his mind palace and recreating what happened kind of situation and whatever. And that could be really powerful. There are just going to be times when it doesn't make sense to do that. And so having another location that you can meet up at, I think, is great. And there's something there about, if we're continuing to sort of tug on the mild psychic abilities, the idea that people can have a location that is a little bit more protected from interference because they have so many memories there is interesting to me. So there's, like, yeah, the diner is a good place for me to meet up, not only because I know for sure that I'll be able to direct my older self to it, because, like, we have these shared memories and can, you know, they'll understand a reference to it. But also the idea that there is something in that's like, and it's a little bit harder to mess with me here. Like, I have a little bit more control over my timeline here because, like, I've, you know, whatever psychic time bullshit is happening, I have a lot of memories in this diner, and therefore I've invested time in it, and I'm in a bubble. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm also wondering if there's a way to kind of integrate how, like, this kind of goes back to, like, the whole role of women in the movie, and it's just like, you know, I'm here for this one particular, like, waitress or what have you, and I don't know, just the way that all of the women are, like, waitresses or strippers or mothers or just some other hyper feminine, like, role is that's like a whole separate thing. But I wonder if there's a specific like anchor that could be at this location that could kind of ground the scene, I guess.
Ooh,
if that makes sense.
Like a person specifically?
Yeah, I think a person that both of them, that you know, both the younger and the older self would kind of have to collaborate on, like, you know, fleshing out this person.
That's cool. Especially that is so ripe for so many different, like, the older self might be able to say, oh yeah, I remember the last time I ever saw them.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And having to be careful, depending on, like, what you know about your younger self, sometimes being able to say, like, yeah, no, here's what happened. It was really sad. Knowing that they won't do anything stupid to try and fix that if they can't. And if you know that you're a little bit more of a hotshot when you were 25 or whatever, being like, I'm not going to tell you what happened because you will
try to do something stupid about this. Yeah.
And even sometimes the older self being like, I wish I'd known this. You could fix it. Yes, it might change me, but go for it. You know? Like,
yeah. I think it could be like one of the stakes that could be, that could be there. Could be fun. I'm also wondering, like one of the questions that kind of came up in my mind as I was watching this movie would be like, okay, but, like, are there no, like, women loopers? Like, because Sarah knows about the loopers, but, like, I don't think she was one or anything, right? Like,
no. Like,
and
it
so,
seems like
part of me is really tempted to make this game be like, okay, well, all of you are playing women, and see how that changes the dynamic of the game, because it would.
Yeah. I mean, so much of in Rian Johnson's work, like, I love a lot of Rian Johnson's work, and I think that he has a fascination with noir aesthetics, very obviously, and he doesn't always seem to know, in my opinion, when playing into regressive gender norms from a genre is, like, a fun homage, which is rarely, and when maybe you can, like, take some trappings from a genre but not play into the regressive gender
but not keep the bigotry, just keep the aesthetic.
He doesn't, in my opinion, have he's probably better now. I think he is better now, my Knives Out is doing more the Knives Out series has done more
So
interesting things
stuff.
to like
Poker Face 2 actually kind of inverts that.
That's true.
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen the Knives Out
I've
series.
seen the first season. It's a good time.
I also really, really liked what he did with The Last Jedi, so
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh my god.
I loved it.
God.
Yeah,
It's
loved it
insane.
so much. Yeah.
But I think that especially his older work, he did not yet have a finely tuned sense of when maybe you should consciously be like, what if a woman was a person in this?
Yeah.
And so yes, leaning like going into the genre space, but being a little bit more explicit about like, don't just do hard-boiled, grizzled detective-y, gritty dude and femme fatale / mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Playing off what you're saying, Sebastian, about like having a defining person in a place, I'm thinking about Fiasco playsets and having relationships, needs, locations, and objects as 4 categories.
I have not played Fiasco. I feel like I'd really like it.
I think you would too, based on some of the ideas you're putting forth here. Yeah, I think you absolutely would. But like 3 of those 4 is people, place, and thing, and they become details that you might orient some scenes around. And so the idea that like we've already talked about defining place, time, but then also having person
And thing.
object,
Yeah.
as details that you can like attach and piece together. Object, I guess, is your gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and this goes to what Seda was saying about like, are there people outside of these relationships? And maybe like care and intimacy still primarily comes from your coworkers, but the idea that a place also has a person, also has like how an object relates to it, and you have to like piece these details together. There's just a lot of juice there.
Yeah, there is. I also did like the idea of like, in any given scene you have to define where your weapon is, and I did like that idea.
The other thing that this is really making me think of is the world building parts of a lot of belonging outside belonging games. I'm especially thinking about Sleepaway, and like a lot of belonging outside belonging games, you are creating a place. You are making a map and it has very specific prompts. Some of them, Sleepaway specifically asks like, if one of the characters being played is like the rope master, like you get to have a little bit more influence as you're drawing your camp. You get to have a little bit more influence over like the ropes course and like the forest around the ropes course and that kind of thing. And I think like having something where this could potentially conflict with making the story like broader and more global, but I don't think it has to. I think it would just mean that you have to do it multiple times, which I think is actually fine. But having people essentially create a city, like having part of the like character and world creation at the start being like, put your diner somewhere, like define your locations as you're like building this world out.
Yeah, put your boss's office on the map.
Yes. Yeah. And then that I think enables a lot of the like action sequency stuff that I don't personally have like interest in necessarily mechanizing combat for this game, but narrativizing it and saying like, okay, we're going to see a chase sequence from my apartment to the boss's office, and like we can see here that the diner's in the middle and I have a friend in the kitchen, so I can run through and like they'll let me out the back door of the kitchen or whatever. Like setting it in a physical space enables a lot more of that in a way that I think could be really, really fun.
We essentially end up setting up a lot of toys and then figuring out how to play with them, right? Like you define all of these different like parts of the world in specific places and then ask like, how do we connect them? And I think that's very fun.
I guess I would be interested in hearing more about like how the kind of psychic telekinesis thing, like what happened with the conversation with Aaron, because that was a thing that I kind of kept forgetting was a thing, because they teased it like with the like floating a quarter, and then Sarah could also do it with like a lighter, and then the kid just exploded everyone, and then I was like, oh yeah, that I remember it now. Like
I have seen Looper before, and I forgot that this was part of the movie.
Yeah, because I kept like forgetting it, and I'm just thinking about like, okay, but like, is there a way to make this like relevant in the game? Because we actually haven't touched upon like the idea of like, I don't know, like if you know that there's a kid born on this day in this hospital that is going to become a supervillain one day, then like that doesn't really seem to be a driving factor in the game that we're making. Like we're more interested in like the character relationships, and like we haven't really talked about like that aspect of it, but I don't know if that is a thing we're even interested in, really, you know?
I'll say for the psychic stuff, one of the things that I was interested in, mostly as a way to tie in the psychic stuff, like, I don't think that if we were starting from sort of, like, scratch with this concept, that this would come up, but as a, like, piece of adaptation, I was like, oh, maybe the reason that these people get hired for this weird time travel job is because being mildly psychic allows you to connect to whatever like time stream stuff, you know? It's like it's an ability.
But Joe himself didn't have any of that telekinesis, or at least we didn't see that he had it. So like, yeah, I mean, he kind of like, because in his narration he was like, it's kind of a cheap trick, like whatever, like
yes know. In Looper it is completely separate. I was like, what if we could make it not completely
what if we could make
separate?
It relevant? Yeah. Like exactly. It was what if we could make it relevant? Yeah.
Okay, maybe this is just because Seda and I just watched the Buffy episode where Willow and Tara hold hands, and them holding hands in instant lesbian love lets them float a vending machine in front of a door.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
But the idea that like the idea that like the level of intimacy between your characters can boost your psychic abilities.
We're doing a Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
You gotta
get in and pilot this Jaeger with me. Yeah, like
that's interesting. Ooh, I'm also honestly, I like that direction. I'm also compelled by the opposite, where they are discouraged from forming attachments because it gets in the way
of like their professionalism, and then there's a whole other aspect to it if like your coworker has to care for you and you're injured and you don't even know each other that well, like that.
But it weakens your psychic ability and or roots you in the timeline.
There's sort of a like, oh well, you have these mild psychic things, we can basically like siphon that off to make time travel cheaper or something. And if you care really deeply about somebody, then some of your psychic energy is very naturally going to maintain that relationship, which means that we can't just take your excess to make time travel cheaper. And so there's almost like a forced isolation where it's like, no, you don't need other people, you just need your job. And and
you're done.
You know,
and you can't form attachments, because then that will affect your ability to jump around at the timeline, because who knows if you're ever going to come back. Like,
I like that. I think that's fun.
This is my rifle. Develop a psychosexual relationship to it and nothing else.
Yes. For profit.
And like, if we were going back to the like sort of adversarial GM role, that then lets a like, okay, I need to destroy all your human relationships.
I'm going to destroy all relationships, and like the only thing left is the gun.
Yeah, and we did address the idea, like we had tossed around the idea of pulling in like the idea that there is a central figure who sort of like is the equivalent of this kid who grows up to be a supervillain, where it's like, and you are being asked to change their fate or destroy them in some way, but we complicate that by making it somebody that you care about or have a relationship to. And I think that that is interesting and doesn't fit super cleanly into what we've talked about here, but in a way that I'm okay with, because I think what we've talked about here, like the attachment to your diner waitress or whoever, you know, almost takes the place of that emotionally in some ways, in a way that I think is a little stronger. And the being adversarial towards the GM character takes the place of that specific type of conflict in a way that I think is also a little stronger. So I'm not feeling like I'm missing that aspect from what we've talked about, but basically just bringing it up to be like, yeah, that is one of the ways that we thought maybe we can address. And Aaron said very early on that this movie is like, what if your kid turned out to be Mewtwo? And that clearly like stuck very deeply in both of our brains, because we both just keep saying, oh yeah, and the kid Mewtwo thing.
The Mewtwo thing, yeah.
And I really, the more we play with the idea that like these relationships are so important and they're enemies and lovers, and the idea that you're all like maybe psychics, maybe powerful psychics, I'm just really into the idea that sort of that role of person who is vulnerable but powerful and important to how the timeline resolves becomes all of your co-workers slash enemies slash lovers. Is that like everyone is someone who is powerful but vulnerable. And now I'm going back to Dream Askew, Dream Apart, as always, of like the basic regular move being take action, leaving yourself vulnerable. Like a defined, just like, who is your character? The thing that has to be true of everyone is you are powerful, but you are vulnerable. And then how does that play into the stories that develop?
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that setting all the characters up to be very isolated sort of turbocharges that exploration of relational stuff, because if we have a bunch of people who are being forced to not connect with a lot of other people, and then we keep putting them in the same room, something weird is going to happen. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
When you put a bunch of very lonely, very powerful people together, like the drama is inevitable.
I love that. Okay, I am so thrilled with all of the directions that we've gone in this conversation. I'm really excited to like keep thinking about it and then see where we get with Sean when we throw everything we've talked about in both of these episodes at him and keep developing out weird stuff. I do genuinely think that somebody who helped make Triangle Agency will fit really well into some of the like strange corporate antagonistic to the GM stuff that we've done here.
Yeah, I want to hear about what he thinks about taking down the boss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that, I think that he has put some of those opinions on paper in Triangle Agency, so I'm very excited to hear him, talk with him about sort of like what that can look like. I think that's going to be really fun. This was great. I loved this. Sebastian, do you have any plugs, anything you'd like to direct people towards?
I'm in a kind of like weird like transitory period in my life where I have to figure out what I want to do for the rest of it,
Yes.
like which seems to be like the ongoing thing in like my 30s. So
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I think that, people say that your 20s are about figuring a lot of stuff out, and they are, but then I think that through all of that you get to know yourself better, and then you hit your 30s and realize, now I have to remake my life into something that fits the me who I now know.
Yeah, right. And now it's like, now I have to like kind of commit to the bit and like figure out what I like, pick a direction and go in it. And
that sounds right.
Yeah, basically. But I guess you can find me on Bluesky, Sebastian Yūe on there, but I'm not super responsive. So if you want to contact me, then just sebastianyue.ca. Thank you.
Fantastic. Jess, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Bluesky, slightly more online than less than I used to, ironically, for the handle at jessfrom.online. You can find my games anywhere you find Jumpgate games, especially on itch.io. You can also find my game I co-made with Riley Rethel, Galactic and Going Rogue, is in late backing on Kickstarter. You can find me all those places.
Yes, and I am Seda. You can find me on Bluesky significantly more than either of these two at potatochips.gaygothvibes.online. I love to post. I have the poster's spirit. I am trying to make sure that I am channeling that in a more positive direction now. I've been putting a lot of strictures in place about when is fun to post and when isn't fun to post, and it's doing me a lot of good. So that's exciting. You can find my work generally.
Love the reflection on online that we've gotten out of this.
I have a website, gaygothvibes.online. You should go to the Haunted Table Patreon and sign up at Ghost tier or above. That is $3 USD. You get access to a bunch of playtest stuff that we're working on. That is Triangle Agency missions, but it's also full games, including the current playtest version for the House Edge, which is our Fist Ultra Edition Triangle Agency crossover, where you are doing a time loop raid of the vaults. Fist mechanics, Triangle Agency universe. It's big, goofy, silly, time travel adjacent fun, and it's a great time. Go check it out. Thank you to Cris Viana for our logo and just general visual design. Thank you to Nicky Flowers for the absolute banger of a soundtrack. This has been This Should Be a Game, a moment about a podcast about the moment where you say this should be a game.
This should be a game.
This should be a game.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. This was awesome. This
Thank you. No, this was really, really fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you could be on.
Yeah, no, this slapped.